So we're going to start by thinking about some applications for Pyung Ahn Cho Dan. Whenever we're looking at applications from a form, we want to be cautious about taking the form in a very literal sense all of the time. For instance, if I'm fighting and I do something like this, right, I'm really leaving my head exposed, and it's not a very good position to fight. Anybody who's very familiar with fighting is going to start with the hands in a chamber like this, and if they have to do a low block to deflect the technique, they're going to do this, and it's going to be short and small, and the other hand's going to stay glued to the chin. So whenever we use applications, we want to be thinking about it from a fighting specific context. And so we're going to make adjustments when available to make it relevant to our fighting. So we don't have to train it one way, and then when we're fighting, do it a different way. We want to develop the muscle memory that relates specifically to the action we're going to do in an actual combat situation. For the low block from Pyung Ahn Cho Dan, there's many things that we can do, but the basic, most simple approach that we work on is from here. John and I are in a fight stance. John is thinking about doing a front kick and pushing in. So go ahead and push, something like this. Or a snap kick, where he's going to snap and kick me here. Go ahead and kick me, John. Just like this, right? From here, I don't want to meet the kick with my forearm. I want to push it to the side. Hopefully that's also going to cause John to have a little moment of balance that's going to allow me to be able to follow with a punch. So he comes in for the kick, and I just push his kick off to the side. Notice this hand comes right back up immediately. Do not leave it down. So one more time here. Right? I move in, keeping this hand up, and punch in a strong stance. Right? It's very important that this hand comes up to protect the face, and I make a small adjustment of distance as he's moving in towards me to make sure my punch is close enough. One other adjustment that I might make for extra protection here is as John goes to throw the kick, I can step slightly on a diagonal to just allow this to happen. Go ahead and kick me, John. This. So even if the kick doesn't make contact, it'll slip off slightly. And this hand comes up immediately. For ease of learning, most of the forms that we do will either involve 90-degree angles or 45-degree angles. It would be very difficult to be introduced to a form where there's many, many different angles all over the place. It's hard enough learning how to do 30 moves in sequence, right? But whenever you can, when you're looking at an application, you want to see if you can find how would an angular movement make this superior. And if you can find that, then you're going to have an extra advantage when you're utilizing the techniques. The next move in Pyung Ahn Cho Dan is a very common element you see in a lot of traditional karate martial arts that descended from that lineage, which is a stepping in punch. This motion, or this motion. In a sparring context, that doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm moving my body before I'm instigating the attack. Very easy for John to intercept that with some kind of kick or something like that. I'm not causing any danger to him, right? So what we like to do is we like to think about, what is this step? What is this step? And we can make it into a penetrating movement with some kind of kicking technique. So now this technique becomes this. John's in a fight stance. My step becomes this. And my punch becomes this. Now, like I said before, we're thinking about a sparring context. This is no good. This is what we want. Of course, also in a sparring context, unlike the form, we would not leave the hand out. The hand comes back quickly. So now, our lunge punch becomes a multiple attack. It's also very easy to think about what logically comes next. What logically comes next, which is the other hand. Now with your partner, you can make the front kick, and they'll block it. Make the lead hand punch, and they'll block that. And then get them with the reverse punch. Whenever we're looking at applications in a form, we can look at what's happening in the form, but then we can also look at what that implies the other person is doing. And that also becomes a part of our form's practice. And sometimes those two things fit together nicely. One piece of the form will fit together very nicely into another piece of the form. For instance, when I'm thinking about moving and then punching, and then I incorporate a kicking technique to cover the movement, John's response becomes a low block to deflect the front kick, and then a middle block to deflect the punch. He opens the hand to control and create the opening for his reverse punch to my ribs. So this fits nicely with our Pyung Ahn Cho Dan, where we go, and we have our low block and our open hand middle block. Whenever you have an open hand, it implies an opportunity to grab. So now, for the sake of changing up a little bit, I'm going to come in with a front kick reverse punch. John blocks, grabs, and punches. Notice he can also incorporate some lateral movement, right? Maybe go this way, John. As I throw the front kick, he low blocks and punches. And now he can also stay where he is for the low block. And on this punch, he moves sideways slightly. Either one of those is very nice, because it really takes away the opportunity to have to punch with the second hand. So now someone's grabbed our arm, right? Perhaps there's a response for that we can look for in the form. And it's here, when we go from this position to here, and then here. We bring this hand up to the solar plexus, the feet turn out, and the hip turns out as this circles down towards the knee, and then we slide back with a hammer strike. If in this previous situation that we just did, I threw my kick, John blocked it, and I threw my punch, and he grabbed my arm, if I move laterally this way, and then circle down over the knee, I can then follow through with a hammer strike, or something like that. So the idea being, whenever somebody grabs you, you have a choice. You can go outside, over the wrist, and down, in which case if they manage to stay holding on, it just keeps putting pressure onto the wrist until it becomes very difficult for them. Here, let's go this way now. So if he grabs my arm across like this, I just go to the outside and down. Now if he continues to hold on, now I can hold his arm, and this happens later on in Pyung Ahn Cho Dan, where we do an arm bar, which is our Hara Tsuromaki. If he grabs with this arm, other arm, it's very much the same motion. I just bring my hand up to the solar plexus, but now instead of going over the wrist, I go over the thumb. And it's actually an even easier escape. This way. And this works so well that he can grab with this arm, and I can do this, and he can grab across on this arm, and I can do that, and he can grab across on this arm, and I do the same motion every single time. Just up to the solar plexus, out, and down, just like in the form. Up to the solar plexus, out, and down. And there's many options that you can have from here. For instance, I can go up to the solar plexus, out, grab, create a handle here, and bring him down. I can go here, and I can hold his fingers, move to the front, and point down, which is very painful. So there's lots of utility here, just in this very small motion that's happening, right? It also works when you're sparring, and you get those guys that like to come in and grab the hand and step and punch like this. When that happens, you just make this hand motion, right? So if I was to do this to John, here, right? Because I've jumped into that punch, it's very easy for him to step out laterally and do this motion to protect.